When I started writing user stories as a product manager, I sucked. I used to think to myself,
"You are the worst. I hate looking at your face."
Without good user stories, my ability to communicate effectively between the customers and the developers was non-existent. So here are 7 lessons that I learned writing user stories. So let's go. It turns out that this is cardinal sin number 1, and I often found myself writing out how I would solve the problem instead of what the problem was. It didn't take long for someone to tell me that my job was to act as an expert language translator.
You are the worst translator.
As a product manager, our job isn't to solve the problem, but to present it as clearly as possible. Product managers know how to get to the root of the problem. We analyze the data, we speak to customers, and we form a hypothesis.
Yes, science!
Then we translate that into requirements that a developer can use to go off and solve the problem. That is where we can add the most value. So the next time you're writing a user story, just ask yourself the question, am I describing how to solve this? Or am I describing what the problem is? And make sure that it's the latter. Have you ever heard the phrase,
"Context is king"?
There's a reason that it's called a user story. It contains all the elements of a story. The who, the what, the where, the why. Okay, you got me. There's literally one element that we leave out that we literally just talked about, and that is the how.
How dare you?
So at this point, you might be asking yourself, often I'll see, as a coffee drinker, I would like to drink coffee so that I can drink coffee. Okay, it's not the worst way to start a user story, but there's something severely lacking.
The answer is context.
What does this actually tell the developer who's then got to go off and make the cup of coffee? Should they make a cappuccino, an espresso, a flat white, a latte, a cafe de ola, a KD pie? Should they make it in a kitchen, an airplane, an underground bunker without electricity? Or on a unicorn riding a red London bus on top of Mount Everest? If I gave this to a developer who had to make coffee for the first time, I'm pretty sure I could guess their reaction. Now let's look at another example. As a coffee drinker, I would like to drink a cappuccino in my kitchen so that I can get that sweet, sweet caffeine hit. The moment I state to get the sweet caffeine hit, it becomes immediately obvious to the person making the coffee what the goal is. So a developer might solve that problem by figuring out, how do I get the most amount of caffeine into that cup of coffee instead of just making a generic cup. Immediately after someone reads this, they can figure out the who, the what, the where, and the why. If you can start a story like this every time, I promise you that your developers are going to say things like this.
I can't find one flaw.
And this.
It's just perfect.
How often have you been in a meeting and immediately clocked off after seeing something like this? Make sure to include diagrams when writing user stories because the reaction is going to be much more akin to this. I have a problem communicating things at work with people who speak the same language, and that goes both ways. I get things wrong all the time.
You are the worst translator.
I'm sorry, I just really love that clip. No matter how fluent you are, there will always be a language barrier. Would you rather be given directions for a city like this? Or would you rather be given it like this? So the next time you write a user story, just ask yourself, does this paragraph of text really need to be there, or can I put a diagram in? I genuinely find myself thinking about the problem that I'm trying to solve. And what that tends to mean is putting myself in the user's shoes. How many pop culture movies are based on the idea of trading places to gain some kind of perspective? Big, 17 again, The Hot Chick, The Change Up, It's a Boy-Girl Thing, literally trading places. Let's say I write a user story about making a cup of coffee. I could talk about needing to boil the kettle, adding coffee to the cup, adding milk. But if I get into the mindset of a coffee drinker, This process becomes way more complex and precise. I boil the kettle, but I might wait for it to cool down so I don't burn the coffee beans. I add coffee to the cup, but I might weigh it out to make sure I get the right amount of caffeine. So what if you know nothing about coffee and you're finding it hard to get into the shoes of people that do? Then you must speak to your customers. And that might be the most important bit of advice that I can give. If you wanted to understand how to make a cappuccino, start by interviewing people who know how to do it. Watch them make it and study every step. Ask them questions on why they're doing things. Why did you weigh the coffee? Why did you stop at 20 grams? This is the biggest thing that I learned in my first year of product management, that speaking to the customers is a treasure trove of information. Most people tend to agree that a single story shouldn't take a developer more than 1 week of work. If you keep writing user stories and you keep saying, and it should do this, and I want it to do that, and this, 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 then it is way too much. The problem with doing this is it doesn't make it clear to the developer what the goal of this particular story is. Can a user story be too small? Well, I guess that it can, but if a user story has a really clear goal and it's well written, it doesn't really matter how short it is. The best way to address this is by using either your product backlog meeting or sprint planning to talk through the user stories and get the feedback. All too often, people just don't write acceptance criteria, and when they do, it's so generic it doesn't really add any value. Think about acceptance criteria like goalposts in a football match. You can have the best football players in the world, but if they keep shooting outside of the goal, they're never gonna win. Acceptance criteria in its simplest form is a condition that has either a pass or a fail. So if I was making a cup of tea, yes, we're onto the tea analogies now, the requirements might be to boil the kettle, put the water inside of the cup with a tea bag, and then add milk. So the acceptance criteria would be the conditions for each of these steps. When adding water to the cup, I might say, given I pour hot water, when it gets to 3/4 full, then I will stop pouring. This is what developers ended up praising me for. All you need to do when writing out acceptance criteria is figure out if it doesn't have a simple pass or fail and there are multiple outcomes, then it probably isn't right. If you're not familiar with the given, when, then method of writing acceptance criteria, or you'd like to learn more about it, let me know in the comments down below, and I might do a video about it. Who knows? Developers, by their very nature, are talented, autonomous problem solvers, and they're really, really good at that last part. If you're not involving them in the process, then you're missing out on tons of value. Imagine handicapping Tiger Woods by giving him a brush to play golf with. You're never gonna unlock his full potential. Okay, do you need to chat to them about moving an image within the app so it's in a slightly different location? Probably not. But if you're looking to build out a brand new feature with several user stories that sit underneath it, then absolutely 100%. I can't tell you how many times I've been going through the discovery process just to have a developer point out about why we can't do something, or actually uncover something that I'd never even thought about. Involve them in the discovery phase. Invite them to customer interviews. Make sure you do your user story reviews through sprint planning and backlog. The improvement in my user stories meant that I was building credibility with the people that I was working with, but it also helped to foster an element of trust. And in the end, it can only lead to one thing.
And the Oscar goes to
Richard Barnes.
Okay, well, before you actually win that award, you probably need to be asking yourself, have I even been using the right format for user story writing? Well, you can click here to find out, or check out a link in the description below. And until next time, ciao a tutti.